Let that line sit in your chest for a second. Most people think anger shows strength. They think raising your voice, slamming doors, sending long paragraphs of texts is power. But the truth? That's the easiest game to play and the most predictable. Anyone can make noise. Not everyone can master silence. Not everyone can sit with calm indifference while the world expects fire. And here's the truth. Your indifference hurts them far more than your anger ever could. Before we dive deep, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what I'm about to share with you isn't just relationship advice, it's a mindset shift. It's Stoic power in action. If you can internalize this, you'll not only move differently in relationships, but in every part of your life. Hey folks, imagine this. Two men walk away from the same relationship. One storms out, shouting, throwing accusations, typing out long emotional essays at midnight just to make his point. They rolls their eyes, tells themselves he's emotional, and moves on. The other man, he says very little. He doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't try to convince. He packs his dignity, redirects his focus, and walks away without bitterness. Guess which one stays in her head longer? Not the one who screamed, the one who said nothing. That's the power of indifference. It's like walking out of a room and leaving the door open, but never stepping back in. The quiet that follows echoes louder than 1,000 words. My friends, society lies to you. It tells you that passion equals anger, that if you don't fight, you don't care. But let me break that illusion for you right now. Anger is not strength. Anger is a leash. Every time they can push your buttons, they control you. They know exactly what words will trigger you, what silences will make you chase, what moves will get you back in line. That's not love, that's manipulation. And the moment you stop reacting, the moment you become calm, still, unmoved, you cut the strings. You're no longer the puppet in their game. You become the one writing your own script. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Folks, that's the essence of indifference. It's not about being cold. It's not about revenge. It's about clarity. It's about saying, my peace is mine, and nothing outside of me gets to own it. Imagine a storm raging outside, trees bending, windows rattling, thunder crashing, but inside your home, there's stillness. A candle burns steadily, untouched by the storm. That's indifference. That's Stoic calm. And here's the part that really unsettles them. When you don't give the anger they expect, you don't just deny them drama, you deny them relevance, because anger still ties you to them. Anger still says, you have power over me. But indifference says, you no longer hold space here. That's not distance for the sake of ego. That's liberation. That's reclaiming yourself. So, my friends, as we begin this journey into why your indifference hurts them more than your anger ever will, I want you to remember one thing. Silence is not weakness. Calm is not surrender. Indifference is not emptiness. It is power, discipline, and freedom wrapped in one. It's the move of a man who values his peace more than winning an argument. And if you stay with me, you're going to see exactly how this mindset changes everything. Write this down in the comments. My silence is power. Say it to yourself, show it to the world, and if this opening already sparks something inside you, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Because what's coming next will not only open your eyes, it will shift the way you move forever. Stay with me. Number 1. The quiet that cuts deeper than words. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. That was Epictetus, and folks, those words are as sharp as they come. Let them cut through the noise for a moment, because here's the truth. Most of them expect anger. They're prepared for your raised voice, your frustration, your sharp words. They've already rehearsed their role in the drama. They know how to roll their eyes, how to dismiss you, how to twist your anger into proof that you're unstable, emotional, or weak. Anger, my friends, is the script they know by heart. But when you give them indifference, when you take the fire out of the fight, it doesn't just surprise them, it unsettles them to the core. Think about it like this. Picture a fire pit, flames rising, sparks flying, smoke filling the air. It feels powerful, doesn't it? But here's the secret. It only burns as long as someone keeps feeding it. You toss in wood, paper, anything that keeps it alive. Without fuel, the fire dies. That's how anger works. They light the match, expecting you to throw in more wood, your words, your emotions, your energy. But the day you fold your arms, sit back, and refuse to feed it, the fire sputters out. And in that silence, in that absence of energy, they're left staring at smoke, fading into the night, wondering why the flames didn't rise like before. Now let's break the lies, my friends. They'll tell you silence means you don't care. They'll say if you don't argue, you're cold, detached, emotionless. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself not to waste your energy on battles that lead nowhere. Anger is cheap. It costs you your peace and gives them the satisfaction of knowing they can still reach you. Indifference, on the other hand, is expensive. It costs them the certainty that they still matter enough to provoke you. And here's where fear creeps in for them. They start asking questions. Why didn't he argue back? Why didn't he fight for me? Why does it feel heavier now that he walked away without words? Anger they can dismiss. They can rationalize it. They can call it emotional outburst. But indifference plants doubt. It makes them replay moments in their head. It forces them to sit alone with themselves, without your reactions to hide behind. That's not just uncomfortable, that's terrifying, because silence turns into a mirror, and that mirror reflects truths they've been running from. Let me give you another metaphor. Imagine two exits from a relationship. The first man slams the door, curses, sends angry messages at 2 a.m. They shakes their head, maybe cries, but tells themselves he's just emotional, that he'll cool down eventually. They can live with that. The second man leaves differently. He doesn't slam the door. He doesn't shout. He simply picks up his dignity, sets it on his shoulders, and walks out calmly. He doesn't come back to knock, doesn't come back to argue. Days later, they still wonders what's going through his mind. That's the quiet that cuts deeper than words. It's not a wound she can bandage with excuses. It's an emptiness that lingers, gnaws, and unsettles. Why is it so difficult, folks? Why is it so hard for many to practice indifference instead of anger? Because silence requires discipline. Anger is instant. It comes fast, it feels powerful, but it fades just as quickly. Indifference requires strength. It means biting your tongue when you want to scream. It means walking away when you want to prove your point. It means putting your pride in your pocket and saying, "My peace is worth more than winning this moment." That's not easy. That's self-mastery, and that's why most never get there. But when you do, something shifts. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When you refuse to mirror their chaos, you show them a version of yourself that's untouchable." They expected fire, but they got stone. They expected drama, but they got calm. And calm, folks, is a force they can't argue with. It doesn't fade. It doesn't get dismissed. It lingers in their mind like an echo in an empty hall. Here's the part they'll never admit. Your indifference makes them feel powerless. Not because you're punishing them, but because you're showing them they no longer hold influence over you. You've removed yourself from the game entirely, and when the rules no longer apply, when the script no longer works, they're left without control. That's a weight heavier than any angry word you could ever throw. So, my friends, ask yourself, are you still feeding fires that should have burned out long ago? Are you still handing over your energy to arguments that only drain you? Or are you ready to step back, breathe, and let silence do the talking? Because that silence is not weakness, it's not surrender, it's a statement. It says, I don't need to prove myself anymore. I don't need to argue to be seen. I know my worth, and it doesn't live in your validation. And when you get to that place, when you can stand tall in silence, when you can look chaos in the eye and remain still, you'll realize you've unlocked a power most people never touch. A power built not on noise, but on control. Not on explosions, but on composure. That's the quiet that cuts deeper than words. Type this in the comments right now. My silence speaks louder. Show yourself. Show the world, remind your own heart that your calm is your weapon. And stay with me, because what comes next will take this even deeper. If you thought silence was powerful, wait until you see what happens when they can no longer predict you. Number 2, when they can't predict you anymore. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius didn't write those words for relationships specifically, but, my friends, they apply perfectly here, because once upon a time they knew your reactions. They had the map to your emotions and they used it. They knew which words would set you off, which silences would make you chase, which jabs would pull you right back into the storm. They thought they had you figured out, and for a while maybe they did. But something has shifted. You've taken back the map. The pauses in your calm are no longer the calm before a storm. They are the new weather entirely. And this, folks, this unsettles them more than any burst of anger ever could. Think of it like a chessboard. For years they've been playing a game where they always knew your next move. If they moved the pawn, you'd move the knight. If they sacrificed a piece, you'd scramble to defend. It wasn't just a game of love, it was a game of control. But suddenly you stop playing by their rules. Suddenly the board they depended on has no pieces. They lean forward waiting for your move, but nothing comes. The game is over before it even begins, and they're left staring at an empty table. That's what indifference does. It erases the script they counted on. Here's the lie they've been living, that your emotions are theirs to control. That if they withdraw, you'll chase. If they lash out, you'll defend. If they guilt trip, you'll fold. They believed your anger was proof that you still cared, and your chasing was proof that they still mattered. But now you've broken that cycle. You've stopped dancing to the music they play, and that silence, that unpredictability. It's louder than rage, sharper than insults, and far more haunting than tears. Ask yourself this: why is unpredictability so unsettling? Why does it get under their skin more than anything else? Because predictability gives comfort. Even if the pattern is toxic, even if it's filled with conflict, at least they know it. They know if they poke here, they'll get a rise. If they pull away, you'll close the gap. If they accuse, you'll explain. But when you stop responding, when you no longer play the predictable role, you flip the script. And nothing is more frightening than realizing the old keys no longer open the lock. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine they send a sharp remark, expecting you to defend yourself. But you don't. They pull back, expecting you to chase. But you don't. They test your patience, waiting for you to prove your commitment. But you don't. Suddenly it feels like they're performing on a stage where the audience has left the building. The applause is gone. The feedback is gone. They're left with nothing but their own echo. And that's when frustration turns inward, not because you punished them, but because they lost control of the predictability they once relied on. And this is where Stoicism breathes life into your discipline. Marcus Aurelius said it best: you only control your mind, not outside events. When you master that, you take away their ability to dictate your state. You are no longer a puppet reacting to strings. You are the one holding your own strings, moving when you choose, how you choose, if you choose. My friends, do you realize how powerful that is? When someone can no longer predict you, they can no longer manipulate you, when they no longer know if silence means anger, or calm means peace, or distance means focus, they're left in the dark. And the dark is where doubt grows. It's where their old confidence crumbles. It's where they replay every action, every word, wondering if they lost their grip completely. Here's the irony. Your calm doesn't just frustrate them, it forces respect. They may not admit it, they may not say it out loud, but deep down, they know. They know you're no longer the same man who could be tugged left and right by every mood swing. You've shifted from being predictable to being sovereign. Your emotions are no longer cheap currency they can spend at will. They're treasures locked inside your inner citadel, guarded by discipline and dignity. So, the next time they try to bait you, the next time they lean on the old tricks to spark the old reactions, remember this. You don't owe them your predictability. You don't owe them your energy. You owe yourself peace. And peace, once guarded, becomes your most intimidating weapon. Write this in the comments right now. Strength lives in my stillness. Let the world see it. Show yourself that you are no longer predictable, no longer a puppet to anyone else's game. And stay with me, because in the next part, we'll talk about something even more unsettling. What happens when your stillness becomes a mirror, and they are forced to face themselves without you blocking the view. Number 3. The mirror of indifference. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Those are the words of Epictetus, and my friends, they cut to the heart of this next truth, because when you stop reacting, when you choose calm indifference instead of anger, you don't just change the game, you change the reflection they see. Think of a still pond at dawn, no ripples, no movement, just a perfect reflection of whatever leans over it. That's you when you stop reacting. You become the mirror. Before, your frustration, your explanations, your defenses, all of it disturbed the surface. They could focus on your tone, your words, your mistakes, anything except their own behavior. But when you step back into silence, the water clears. Suddenly, the only thing staring back is their own reflection. And let me tell you, folks, most people don't like what they see when the mirror stops moving. Let's break this down. When you were reactive, you gave them something to point at. They could say, "You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. Look how angry you get." It became their shield. Your emotions blurred the truth, gave them excuses, and protected them from having to face their own faults. But indifference removes the shield. Your silence strips away the cover they hid behind. Now it's just them, raw, unfiltered, exposed. And that's scary. That's the fear they'll never admit, because deep down they know your calm is showing them what they don't want to see, that maybe the problem was never your anger, maybe the problem was them. And without your fire to distract, without your words to debate, they're forced to sit with that reality. Folks, silence has a way of turning whispers into shouts. It makes every hidden flaw echo louder. Imagine this. They throws a jab at you, expecting the old version, the one who jumps to defend, to explain, to fight. But you don't move. You don't react. You just sit steady. Now she's not fighting you. They's fighting herself. Her own words hang heavy in the air, unanswered. Her own behavior reflects back at her like a mirror she can't cover. And that, my friends, is what makes indifference so unsettling. It forces people to see themselves without distraction. Here's the lie many believe, that if you don't respond, you're weak, that if you don't argue, you're avoiding. But the truth? It takes far more strength to stay calm than to lash out. It takes discipline to sit in silence while someone tries to provoke you, Weakness is being dragged into every storm. Strength is standing so firm that the storm spends itself out against you and you never move. Why is this so difficult? Because reacting feels natural. It feels like release. You want to prove your side, defend your worth, show your right. But ask yourself, did it ever really change them? Did all the words, all the shouting, all the explaining ever make them see you clearer? Or did it just give them more fuel to twist, more excuses to hide behind? You know the answer. That's why indifference is freedom. It doesn't feed the cycle. It ends it. And here's the beauty of this mirror. When you stop being the emotional sponge, you stop carrying their chaos. Their storm stays theirs. Their selfishness, their manipulation, their disrespect, it all sits in their reflection. You're no longer the buffer, you're the observer, and that shift changes everything. Let me remind you of the Stoic principle. Your inner citadel is your fortress. No one gets in unless you open the gates. Indifference is closing the gates. It's saying, you can rage outside all you want, but inside here, it's still. That kind of power doesn't just protect you, it terrifies them, because they can't control what the mirror shows, and over time the silence starts working on them. They replay moments in their head, looking for signs, searching for answers. They might even tell themselves your silence is cold, heartless. But deep down, they know. It isn't cold, it's clarity. You didn't disappear. You just stopped being the shield that let them avoid themselves. You stopped carrying the weight that was never yours to bear. My friends, there's nothing more powerful than making someone face their own reflection. It's not revenge, it's not punishment, it's self-respect. And when you embrace it, you'll realize something life-changing. You don't need to prove the truth anymore. The truth reveals itself when you stop getting in its way. So write this in the comments right now. I am the mirror. Let that be your reminder that your calm is a reflection, your silence is clarity, and your indifference is the key that forces the world to face itself. Show yourself, show the world, and stay with me, because next we'll go even deeper into why indifference isn't just a mirror, it's the fire extinguisher. When you stop feeding the flames, you kill the chaos before it consumes you. Number 4, no fire without fuel. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. Epictetus said that centuries ago, and folks, those words hit harder the more you sit with them, because every time you let someone pull you into an argument, every time you explode, every time you defend yourself just to be heard, you're not winning. You're handing them the match and the wood to keep the fire alive. Let's break it down with a simple truth. Every fire needs fuel, oxygen, wood, paper, something to keep it burning. Without fuel, even the biggest flame dies out. And arguments? They're no different. They don't survive on silence. They survive on reaction. Your words, your emotions, your need to be understood, that's the fuel. And as long as you keep tossing logs into the flames, they'll keep burning. But the moment you stop, when you refuse to play along, the fire starts to die. Imagine this with me. They throws an accusation your way. Old, you would have jumped in immediately. You'd defend yourself, explain every detail, raise your voice as frustration grew. Hours later, you're drained, and nothing is resolved. That's how the cycle used to go. Now picture the new you. Same accusation, same bait. But this time, you look at her calmly and say, I'm not discussing this right now. Then you walk away. No shouting, no defense, no fire. And what happens? The heat doesn't rise. The flames don't grow. The fire starves. And all that's left is smoke, curling into the air, fading into nothing. That's the discipline of indifference. You're not avoiding. You're choosing wisely. Because here's the lie we've been fed. If you don't argue, you don't care. If you don't fight back, you're weak. But my friends, the truth is the opposite. Anyone can lose control. Anyone can yell. It takes strength to hold your tongue. It takes power to step away when everything in you wants to prove your point. Silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. Think about it like boxing. Two fighters step into the ring. One swings wildly at every move, exhausting himself. The other stays calm, blocking, conserving energy, waiting for the perfect moment. Who has the real control? Not the one flailing around, burning out. It's the one who knows when not to swing. That's you when you refuse to fuel pointless fires. You're not surrendering. You're protecting your energy for battles that actually matter. And here's what they never expect. They're used to the spark catching. They're used to seeing you react, to feeling that rush of energy when you bite the bait. It reassures them. It proves they still have influence. But when you don't, when their spark hits stone instead of dry wood, that unsettles them. Because suddenly they're the only one burning, they're the only one expending energy, and without your fire, they're forced to face their own flames. Why is it difficult to stop feeding the fire? Because arguments feed our ego. They trick us into thinking, if I just explain better, they'll understand. If I shout louder, they'll finally get it. But folks, you know as well as I do, that never happens. It just drags you deeper. It leaves you drained, empty, and no closer to peace. That's why Stoicism calls us higher. To step back, to realize not every spark deserves our oxygen, not every flame is worth our wood. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That's the filter you use when deciding whether to speak. If engaging doesn't bring truth or peace, why waste the breath? Why fuel a fire that only burns you? And here's the hidden power. When you stop feeding the flames, you break the pattern. You teach them a quiet lesson, not through lectures, not through anger, but through absence. You show them that their chaos no longer has currency with you, that your peace is too expensive to spend on arguments that lead nowhere, and deep down they feel it. They realize the fight isn't fun anymore, because you're no longer showing up to play. So, my friends, ask yourself this: what fires are you still feeding? Who are you still giving oxygen to that only leaves you choking on smoke? And what would happen if you stopped? If you chose calm indifference instead of reaction? I'll tell you what happens. The fire dies, and in its place, you reclaim your strength. Write this in the comments right now. I choose control over chaos. Let that be your declaration, your reminder that not every spark deserves your energy. Show yourself, show the world, that your peace is not up for negotiation. And stay with me, because in the next part, we'll talk about what happens when the balance shifts, when your energy stops orbiting them and starts building you. And that, my friends, is when the real power begins. Number 5. Shifting the balance of power. He who controls himself controls the world. Those words, my friends, aren't just philosophy. They are the essence of power. Because for a long time, maybe you didn't realize it, but the balance was tilted. Your world seemed to orbit around them. Your calls, your messages, your check-ins, your reassurances, everything you did revolved around proving they mattered. And for a while that felt right. It felt like loyalty, like love. But in reality, it gave away something precious, your center. Picture this. The Earth orbits the Sun, steady, predictable. That was you. They were the sun at the center of your universe, and your energy circled endlessly around them. Every word they said, every mood they carried, pulled you like gravity, and that gave them power. They never had to wonder where your attention was. It was always fixed on them. But then something shifted. You stopped revolving. You remembered you are not a planet. You are your own sun. And suddenly the balance of power changed. At first, they didn't notice. They thought it was temporary. They assumed you'd call later, text tomorrow, check in by the weekend. They expected the old pattern to hold. But as days passed, that silence grew louder. Where there used to be constant engagement, there's now space. And that space unsettles them because it isn't empty. It's full of something new. It's filled with your focus on yourself, your work, your training, your mission. You've taken the energy you once poured into them and redirected it into building yourself. Here's the lie they believed, that your devotion was endless, that no matter how much they pulled, you would keep giving. But devotion without boundaries isn't love, it's dependency. And dependency keeps you trapped. By shifting your focus, by reclaiming your energy, you've broken that chain. You're no longer defined by your role in their life. You're defined by the mission you've chosen for yourself. Think of a scale. On one side, you've placed all your time, your attention, your effort. On the other side, very little. For years, the weight was one-sided, and you felt it, even if you didn't admit it. But the moment you stopped pouring into their side of the scale, the balance evened out. You stood taller, steadier, and they felt lighter, not because they were freer, but because the weight of your attention was gone. And that absence, my friends, is heavier than anger ever could be. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That's what this shift is about. Not arguing for their approval, not proving your worth, but becoming who you were meant to be regardless of their opinion. You stop being a man orbiting someone else's life, and you start being a man grounded in his own. Why is this so difficult? Because it feels like loss at first. When you stop giving them all your attention, when you stop chasing, there's an emptiness you have to face. You wonder, will they forget me? Will they move on without me? But here's the truth, that emptiness isn't loss, it's space. Space for growth, space for strength, space for the life you were meant to build. And once you fill it with purpose, with discipline, with focus, you realize it was never emptiness at all. It was freedom. And here's what unsettles them most. They were used to being the center. They liked the orbit. It gave them security, knowing your energy was theirs to claim. But when you shift that energy, when you pull it back to yourself, they feel the ground move beneath them. They realize they're no longer the gravitational force in your world. They're just one part of a bigger picture, and whether they admit it or not, they feel the loss. This isn't about revenge. It's not about making them miss you. It's about reclaiming what was always yours, your focus, your purpose, your power. And when you do, you discover something they can never take from you. Peace rooted in self-mastery. A man anchored in his mission is far stronger than a man orbiting someone else's approval. So, my friends, write this in the comments right now. My focus is mine. Let it be your declaration, your reminder that your energy belongs to you first. Show yourself, show the world that you no longer orbit anyone. You are your own sun, and your power is untouchable. Stay with me, because in the next part we'll go deeper into how your calm, your unshakable composure, becomes the very challenge they can't overcome, no matter how hard they try. Number 6. Calm as a challenge. You will continue to suffer if you have an emotional reaction to everything that is said to you. True power is sitting back and observing things with logic. True power is restraint. Those words, my friends, speak to the heart of this truth. Because there are people out there who thrive in chaos. They don't just stumble into storms, they create them. Emotional chaos is their playground. And as long as they can pull you into it, as long as they can get a rise out of you, they win. Not because the fight was worth winning, but because they proved they could drag you off balance. That's how the game works. If they poke you and you explode, they win. If they guilt-trip you and you defend yourself endlessly, they win. If they pull back and you chase, they win. The rules are simple. Your reaction is their reward. And for a long time, maybe you played along without realizing it. But now something has changed. You've discovered the Stoic weapon they never expected, calm indifference. Imagine a storm battering against a mountain. Winds howl, rain lashes, thunder crashes. But the mountain doesn't move. It doesn't flinch, doesn't bow, doesn't argue with the storm. It simply stands, and eventually the storm passes, spent, powerless, and forgotten. That's what your calm becomes, a mountain against their chaos. And here's the part that unsettles them most. Your calm is not silence before an explosion. It is the explosion that never comes. At first they think it's temporary. They'll test you, maybe with sharp words, maybe with subtle jabs, maybe with silence designed to provoke. They've seen you break before, so they expect the cracks to show again. But this time nothing. You don't flinch, you don't fight, you don't dance to the tune they're playing. That's when it hits them. Your calm isn't a pause, it is the reaction. And that, folks, is a challenge they can't overcome. Here's the lie they tell themselves, that your calm means you don't care, that your silence is weakness, that you're avoiding because you have no words left. But the truth? Calm is the hardest discipline there is. Anyone can shout, anyone can slam doors, but to remain steady, to hold your composure when every nerve inside you wants to react, that's mastery, that's strength. Why is it so hard to do? Because we're wired to prove ourselves. We're wired to defend our worth, to explain our side, to shout, "You don't see me, you don't understand me." But that's the trap. That's how they keep you in the game. And when you break that cycle, when you stop giving them the fuel of your reaction, you rob them of their favorite weapon. Your calm becomes a wall they can't climb. And here's the irony. They will forget your angry words. They'll dismiss your emotional outbursts, but they won't forget the day you stopped reacting. They won't forget the image of you sitting steady, eyes calm, unbothered, impossible to pull into their chaos. That kind of composure gets under the skin. It lingers in their mind because it forces them to face the truth. They no longer have control over you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is what your calm represents. It's not coldness. It's not retreat. It's proof that your emotions belong to you now, not to anyone else's provocations. You've built a fortress inside yourself, and no storm can breach it unless you open the gates. And let me tell you, folks, that fortress doesn't make you forgettable. It makes you unforgettable, because when you refuse to break, you set a new standard, not just for how they see you, but for how you see yourself. You prove that your peace is more valuable than chaos, that your discipline is stronger than your impulses. That's the kind of power that doesn't just win arguments, it ends them before they begin. So ask yourself this: do you want to keep being dragged into storms that were never yours? Or do you want to be the mountain that stands unmoved? Do you want to keep proving your worth through noise, or do you want your silence to prove it for you? The choice is yours. And once you choose calm, once you choose restraint, you'll realize something. They can test you, but they can't touch you. Write this in the comments right now. My calm is my power. Say it. Own it. Show yourself and the world that you are no longer a puppet to chaos. You are the mountain, steady and unshakable. And stay with me, because next we'll uncover the deeper truth of silence, the kind of silence that doesn't just protect your peace, but demands respect without ever asking for it. Number 7. Silence that demands respect. Silence is one of the great arts of conversation. That was Marcus Tullius Cicero, and my friends, those words strike at the core of what we're about to dive into. Because silence, when chosen deliberately, is not emptiness. It's not weakness. It's not avoidance. Silence, when mastered, is power. And more than that, it's respect. Here's the truth most don't want to admit. People are terrified of silence. They'd rather hear your anger than your quiet. They'd rather argue with your words than sit in the echo of your absence. Because silence doesn't just stop the noise, it forces reflection. And reflection, my friends, can be brutal. Think of a courtroom. A lawyer makes an accusation, expecting the other side to defend themselves, to object, to speak. But what happens when the accused says nothing, when they simply sit, calm and unbothered, as if the words carry no weight? The silence in that room becomes louder than any defense could ever be. It shifts the balance. It makes the accuser uneasy, because now the burden of proof is all on them. That's what happens in relationships too. Your silence places the weight back where it belongs. You're no longer defending, no longer proving, no longer explaining. You're simply showing through stillness that your presence isn't guaranteed, and that realization demands respect. Here's the lie they've been living, that if you stay quiet, you've surrendered. That if you stop speaking, you've lost. But let me tell you something. Silence is not surrender. Silence is a choice, and a choice is control. You're not refusing to speak because you have nothing to say. You're refusing because not everything deserves a response. And that's a kind of strength few ever master. Imagine this. For years, your words were the reassurance they counted on. Your explanations were the safety net. Even your arguments were proof that they still mattered enough to get a reaction. But one day, it changes. You stop handing them your voice so freely. You stop giving them the comfort of knowing they can reach you whenever they choose. Suddenly, silence replaces noise, and that silence, it weighs heavy. It makes them wonder, what is he thinking? Why isn't he responding? Why doesn't he need to explain himself anymore? That's respect being born, not from fear, not from threats, but from absence. Seneca wrote, "Silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life." And isn't that the truth? Silence doesn't come easy. You had to suffer to learn it. You had to go through the pain of wasted energy, the exhaustion of endless explanations, the futility of trying to be understood by someone who didn't want to understand. But in that suffering you found discipline, you found stillness. And now your silence speaks volumes. Why does silence demand respect? Because it sets boundaries without words. It says, I will not waste my breath proving my worth. I will not trade my peace for noise. I will not explain myself to someone who has already decided not to listen. That kind of stance changes everything. People may argue with your words, but they cannot argue with silence. They can ignore your anger, but they cannot ignore your absence. They can dismiss your noise, but they cannot dismiss the stillness you've chosen. And here's the hidden power. Silence doesn't just protect your dignity, it shifts the focus back on them. When you're no longer responding, no longer reacting, they're forced to sit with their own behavior. They replay the words they threw at you, the games they played, the chaos they created, and for the first time, there's no distraction. It's just them, staring into the mirror of their own actions. And whether they admit it or not, that silence teaches them more than your words ever could. But I want you to remember this. Silence is not a game. It's not about manipulation. It's not about making someone chase you. It's about valuing your peace so highly that you refuse to spend it recklessly. You don't withhold your voice to punish. You withhold it because your energy is sacred. And when you treat it as sacred, others learn to respect it. My friends, think about the people in your life who've left the deepest impression on you. Was it the ones who shouted the loudest, or was it the ones who spoke little but lived with such dignity that their silence carried weight? That's what you're becoming when you master indifference and restraint. You're not trying to be loud, you're trying to be solid. And solid men don't need to raise their voice to be heard. Their presence alone speaks louder than noise. So the next time you feel the urge to argue, to explain, to prove yourself, stop. Ask yourself, Does this deserve my words? Does this deserve my peace? Or will my silence say more than any explanation could? That's the discipline. That's the art. And once you master it, you'll realize something profound. Respect doesn't come from shouting. Respect comes from living in such a way that silence becomes your statement. Now we've reached the end, and I want you to declare something for yourself. Write it in the comments right now. My dignity lives in silence. Let it be your seal, your mark of growth, your commitment to no longer waste your voice on what doesn't deserve it. And here's my final word for you. Don't just listen to these lessons, live them. Protect your peace, guard your energy, and let silence become your standard. Because when you stop giving away your words carelessly, the world around you learns to lean in, to listen, to respect what you do choose to share. That, my friends, is Stoic power in its purest form. If this message opened your eyes, carry it with you today. Remember, anger is loud, but silence echoes forever.